Hello and welcome to A Dose of Wellbeing, the Pharmacist Support Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Cochran, and it's great to have you with us as we discuss all things wellbeing in pharmacy. I'm joined today by Taiwo Owatemi, a pharmacist whose path has led her to becoming a member of Parliament. In this podcast, we talk about her journey, how she manages her own well-being in sometimes challenging circumstances, and how she remains motivated and connected to her values when facing adversity. This promises to be an interesting and inspiring conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. So, Taiwo, thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. Quite excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I appreciate you coming all the way up from Coventry,
From
London.
sunny Coventry.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So I think your story could be really inspiring to other people. And as I understand it, you began your career in pharmacy.
Yep.
And then you became an MP at the age of 27, which is pretty impressive. Can you tell us about your journey and how you came to this point?
Well, it wasn't a planned journey. I would say, or if my mum was answering this, she would say, I'm a professional moaner. Right?
Okay.
So I am the kind of person who's like, well, why is things like this? Why can't we change things? And being a cancer pharmacist, constantly you're speaking to patients, you're hearing about the challenges that they and their family are going through due to the diagnosis, but also you're having difficult conversations about what medications they want, and you're having conversations about treatment plans. And sometimes you'll meet patients who might want access to just something that just isn't available from the trust. And the more that I had patients asking these questions of, well, why can't I have this? And somebody else in Manchester, for example, has been prescribed this medication. It got me thinking, yeah, why can't you have this? Like, what is actually happening in terms of the way the medicine's commissioned across the country? That we have, the different clinical commissioning guidelines. So that got me interested in policy in terms of who's writing it, what was the logic behind it, but also as a practicing pharmacist, how do I explain this to my patients? So I was actually speaking to a colleague, Ade. He's quite a known pharmacist, and I was just speaking to him about, look, I am interested in policy now. I really want to understand how pharmacy policies are shaped. I want to be able to impact, because my patients are asking me questions that generally I can't answer.
Yeah.
And so he encouraged me to be able to push forward, ask the questions, and to be able to challenge the status quo. And the more that I got involved in asking the questions, it's a very random incident unrelated to pharmacy, but I got home one day. I was angry, I was upset, just about inequalities that generally exist in society, but my bins were not collected. My bins were not collected. And I walked into the house and I was like, why isn't our bins being collected, Mum? This is just another issue. And my mum said, you know what, I generally hear you complain a lot, but there's two types of people in this world. There are people who actually do stuff, and there are people who don't and keep quiet. And I would prefer you to choose which side you're going to be on. But if not, I don't want to be hearing this. And I thought, oh, I wasn't expecting you to say that. I expected you to be on my side. And her challenge made me go, actually, I am going to do something. I'm going to join a party, and I'm going to start asking the questions locally and hold people accountable. So long-winded, that is how I politically decided I was going to join a party. But my journey into politics started from patients asking me questions that I generally wanted answers for, but I just couldn't answer it.
It's an amazing story. Yeah, I think that's just fantastic. And a lot of people have big dreams or feel inspired to maybe want to make a difference like you were, but are held back by fear and self-doubt and don't ever actually do it. So what do you think made you believe that you could make such a transition in your life and actually do what you thought you could do?
For me, I don't see it as a massive career going outside of my career. I just see this as another path in pharmacy, which is that pharmacy has a policy side, that create recommendations for government, and I just entered that route. So sometimes when I speak to other pharmacist colleagues who go, oh, well, how did you make that transition? It's just like, well, this is an arm of pharmacy that actually we should be promoting more. We should be giving pharmacists the necessary skills to engage with government and be part of that conversation around how health, the NHS, and just wider policies are being created. But generally, I did not think that I was stepping away from pharmacy, if I'm going to be like really honest about it. I just felt like I was just following a policy pathway.
It's so interesting to hear you say that, because I'm sure there are people who would be like, now hang on a minute, like you've become a politician. Like, so to probably from the outside, it looks like quite a major change. But I guess what you're saying is it never felt that daunting or scary or like, ooh, should I do this? Because it felt like you were kind of just following a different route within pharmacy or within a path that you were already kind of on.
Yeah, I think it just felt like a logical step from my perspective. So when I got involved with the Labour Party, I was predominantly actually involved in the Fabian Society, which is the policy end of the party. So a lot of my time was going to the meetings, helping draft the health policies for manifestos, having conversations with Shadow Secretary of States at the time, and just helping them form what I think good healthcare should look like for the country. So that was where my passion kind of lied. And in terms of entering into actual politics, it was actually through a conversation with a colleague who said, well, writing policy is all well and good, and I can point to thousands of papers that have been written, but implementation and accountability tends to be where the problem is. And this is something that you are quite good at in terms of asking those questions, scrutinizing. Have you thought about standing? And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. It never once crossed my mind. And then I started speaking to other people about what that would look like. And so we had other healthcare professionals who were already like in politics. So we had Rosanna Khan, who's a doctor, with Jones. We've had quite a few healthcare professionals who have made that particular transition. So I guess doing my research, I realized that actually, A, I was interested in scrutinizing. B, I wanted to be involved in the implementation of the policies that I was writing, and to actually ensure that the different loopholes that might exist in these policies, that I'm proactively able to like address them. And then I also realized that actually it's been done before, so why can't I do it? But I have to admit, everything happened pretty quickly. I think that we had a 2019 election, which was in December. I was having these discussions like quite early on in the summer, and before I knew it, it was just a matter of like back to back. So it was really quick.
Wow, that's amazing. So I think you've just identified that pivot point where it probably changed a little bit from like, well, I was just developing policy in pharmacy, to where it was like, oh, I could actually make quite a big change and move into politics. And maybe the fact that it happened fast was a good thing, because it didn't give you time to go like, do I actually want to do this? And it's quite a brave thing to do.
Yes, it is. And you're right. Definitely the fact that it happened fast just meant that I was focused on just delivering what I needed.
Yeah.
But actually, for me, it's one of the most humblest things that I've ever done. And I also pinch myself. I'm like, I actually get to be involved in shaping health policies, in providing those answers that I was asking initially. And being able to make that impact is something that I genuinely feel very lucky and humbled to be able to do.
Yeah. Oh, it's just amazing. You mentioned a few people, but were there any people who really inspired you?
Oh, there were a few different people in my life that just made me feel like I can do whatever I wanted to do, even when I never thought about it. So I think in school, I was exceptionally lucky to have teachers who were very obsessed with me. Not obsessed like in a rude way, but generally like believed in my potential.
They saw something in you.
Yeah. And I would be like, miss, this is a bit weird. But they were like, no, you can do this. You had probably more of a bigger vision for me than I had for myself, if I was going to be genuinely honest. And there were 3 teachers that stood out for me. I had my citizenship teacher, Miss Dyke, who was just amazing, who generally was very on me in terms of recognising just my academic abilities, encouraging me to think beyond and trying her best to expose me to the different opportunities. And I think it was her that actually got me involved in activism. So doing things like I was on the Oxfam Youth Board for a while, just general like social campaigns. She was the person that showed me the different opportunities that was available. And then in terms of pharmacy, I love science and maths. I love chemistry and maths.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize how much, like, maths makes me happy.
Okay.
Like, I can sit down with my nieces and be like, let's go through this. And so I had a maths teacher who sat down with me and said, you really love maths and you really love chemistry. Have you thought about doing pharmacy? And I was like, no, that's not a career that I'd really thought about. But he was a retired pharmacist.
Oh, okay.
And he decided to come in to teach maths as a passion.
Yeah.
And it was through his mentorship that helped me choose the right universities, and got me involved in actually understanding pharmacy as a profession and the different impact that we can have. So I would say that those two people in my early lives helped to shape me. And then in terms of making that transition into policy and just being able to take bold steps post-graduation, I would say one of the conversations that stayed with me was my conversations with Ade Williams. And he's a pharmacist in Bristol. And my one of my family friends had connected me with him. And I was telling him about some of my plans and my interests. And he just asked me, Mom, why don't you just do it? And again, very similar to my mum's conversation, he just made me think, oh, I guess the barriers that I thought about, or the fact that I didn't really know how to start, that they were just more of my own internal voices clouding my ability to take a step rather than whether or not I could actually do things. So I really found my conversation with him valuable. And honestly, anytime I speak to him, he is such a positive advocate of just taking bold steps in making an impact and really believing in yourself. And I genuinely feel exceptionally lucky to have such introduction.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the three people, four if we count your mom in there, who it sounds like made big impact on you. A lot of that was because they believed that you could do things, which kind of almost like gave you permission or made you think, oh, maybe I can, and I think that's really an important point to make.
Yeah, they challenged me and they pushed me back past the limitations that I'd set for myself.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love people who kind of stand up and say, push me and make me think, and question my own thoughts and rationale. So yeah.
Amazing. And so how would you say being a pharmacist has helped prepare you for becoming an MP, or maybe it hasn't, I don't know, has it? And if so, is there any sort of a transferable skill set?
I think pharmacists make the best MPs. Now,
okay.
I know that I am biased, but we make the best MPs. We are patient. We can actually listen to people, not just like, nod your head, but actually engage, hear the words that people are saying and what people are not saying in a conversation. And I think those are great critical skills in terms of being able to ask the right questions, hold people accountable. We're also used to working under pressure.
Yeah. Like
in the pharmacy world, no one day is the same. And that's what I loved about pharmacy. Pharmacy helped in terms of communication skills, being able to speak to anyone, and empathy. Empathy is so important in politics. And I would say that actually when you speak to members of the public, it's one of the key skills that they want more from politicians, people who understand lived experiences, challenges, and who's able to empathize. And pharmacy gives you those skills. So I would say that the key things you need as a politician, pharmacy gives you that. And I actually hear that from many colleagues who say to me, you're very good at listening.
Yeah.
And people really feel comfortable talking to you. And at first I was like, isn't that just a general human skills?
Yeah.
But actually I realized that is something that lots of people don't have, lots of politicians don't have. And I would say in terms of my job as a government whip, one of the reasons why I was brought into the whip's office very early was because I have great relationships with lots of people and I'm able to just break down barriers and just have open and honest conversations and empathize and really just support people. And a lot of that has come from the pharmacy profession.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can really see those parallels and how useful those skills would be in politics. Have there been any particular challenges that you've faced since making this transition?
Where do I start? I think imposter syndrome.
Okay.
If I'm actually going to be honest. Being elected at 27, I think I still remember the next day after I got elected, and you normally get a phone call. So I got this phone call. Once you get elected on the day, you're given an envelope saying, congratulations, this is a number to call, somebody be in contact with you. And I get this phone call saying, congratulations, you need to come down to London, to Parliament. And I was thinking, why do I need to do that? And following that phone conversation, my mum called me and she's like, 27 is quite a young age to be elected as a member of Parliament. How are you feeling? And I thought, I had never once thought about my age until you brought it up.
Right.
And it had never been an issue on the doorstep or anything. But all of a sudden, when she said that imposter syndrome kind of came over me, as I recognised that usually when I'm in a meeting, I tend to be the youngest person. I tend to be probably the only black person. That's actually quite normal. And sometimes I am the only female. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that imposter syndrome, but also just being the only one in the room, is definitely two of the biggest surprises that I've faced, especially because, like, as a pharmacist, I'm used to a profession where there's lots of women.
Yeah.
I'm used to a profession where it's quite diverse.
Yeah.
So I would say that was something that I just particularly, and I just never really occurred to me that as I make this transition, this is going to be a new challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how would you say you've dealt with that challenge?
I would say that it's accepting, that everybody feels imposter syndrome. And I, like the more that I know many of my colleagues and many people who are household names, I started to realise actually everybody feels it. Everybody has different ways of dealing with it, even when they're speaking to the media or speaking to various colleagues, and to accept the fact that it's a human trait, but also sometimes questioning the reason why I might feel that imposter syndrome in a room, whether or not it's like something that's happened in the past or whether or not it's just me overthinking, just being able to just kind of accept that this is a normal feeling and push back. In terms of being the only person in the room, for me, I have been motivated to bring more people into the room. So I wanted more pharmacists. We have an extra one this last election, and I'm working to get more because I generally was like, we've got lots of doctors, lots of physios. I don't know why we can't have more pharmacists. And I generally believe that having more pharmacists involved in health policy making will help to make such a massive difference to the way that public health is approached in this country. So for me personally, it's that representation has always been a massive area that I wanted to focus on. Having more young MPs has also been an area which I just decided that it's something that I really wanted to really see more of, because Parliament has to be representative of society, and B, given the fact that our policies impact the next generation, and it's always the previous generation to do it to the next generation, I personally think it's great to have people who are going to be impacted by these policies involved in the creation from the beginning, so that it doesn't feel like policy is being done to them, but with them. And that's why, like, now when I look at this parliamentary term and we have so many young MPs, it's exciting. And also I'm able to have conversations with them to say, welcome, you're 23, you're 27, you're 26. This is normal. Age is not a barrier. See it as a strength. Actually own it. You have a completely different lived experiences. Your perspectives are going to be different. And this is what we need in that policy-making decision. And when they're having conversations based on what I went through the last parliamentary term, it's actually, I'm glad that I went through it so that they don't have to start from those areas of challenge, and I'm able to provide some advice. And in terms of race, that is still work that I'm doing. Yeah. But also asking sometimes, why am I the only person in this room who just looks like me?
Yeah.
And challenging other people to be intentional about that and what they're doing to create more spaces for other people to come through.
It's amazing. So I think a lot of what you're saying, I'm hearing, is like you see yourself as almost opening the door for other people. Yeah. And the fact that representation, like if someone sees someone who looks like them in a particular role, it feels like, oh, there's opportunity for me too. So you're really opening the door for a lot of other people as they come up, which I imagine could be kind of motivating for you.
Yes, I want to see, I personally believe in supporting other people to achieve their true potential.
Yeah.
And that is a value that I live by. So opening the door as wide as possible and letting other people come through. Because I recognize being in such an old traditional institutions that sometimes that door is not left as wide as open as it probably should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That I imagine that will be really inspiring to hear for a lot of people listening. So being an MP is a really public role. Yes. And these days people can conduct themselves very differently online than they might do in real life. And I just wonder, I've observed, it seems like people in really public roles can be subject to quite a lot of criticism, abuse, that kind of thing. And I wondered if this is something that you've experienced.
I think sadly, it's something that anyone in the public eye will experience. Mm-hmm. It can be very difficult. Mm-hmm. It can be intrusive. And sometimes it can just be baseless. Actually, sometimes when you look at some of the comments, you think, good Lord, can you actually say that to somebody if you were having a face-to-face conversation with them?
They probably wouldn't.
They can't. That's the nature of it. And it is hard sometimes. It's hard when you don't see, for me personally, it's hard when you don't see the logical argument the person's making. Like sometimes I am somebody who believes in engagement proactively through social media and people being able to have constructive conversation. But sometimes it's just very hateful, it's baseless, and it's just people deciding to be horrible. And I've learned to just completely step away from that, not engage, keep away from the comments. Actually, that was one of the best advice that I've been given. But also fundamentally, every single time someone says something, I always ask, did I do my best in that situation? Mm-hmm. I also, in order for me to stay grounded, I also ask myself, why are you doing this? Like I always challenge myself in terms of, do you remember your why? Do you remember the impact that you want to make? Are you making that impact? And ensuring that those voices are not the voices that I'm hearing in my head. They don't overcrowd all the positivity that's being done. I also make sure that I feel exceptionally lucky actually to have other MPs that I can rely on, that I can have conversations with, who we have brutally honest conversations with each other, telling each other, well done, sometimes, no, that shouldn't have happened. And having that collective sisterhood, that friendship group helps to make such a massive difference, even when sometimes it just feels very dark and very negative. But also recognizing that this is not a representation of the whole population. Yeah. Just because X, Y, and Z on social media said something does not mean that's what the millions of people around the country, around the world think. And just recognize that actually those people might be going through something on their own and they're just looking for an outlet to pour that in. It's not right that they're choosing to do that on your page, but just giving them some empathy and trying to see things sometimes just from a human perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like part of your strategy for trying to remain positive and protect your own mental health is to not look at the comments, for one thing. So it doesn't even get in there in the first place. No. But then if it does, somehow, if you are seeing it, you're trying to keep your eye on the bigger picture.
Always on the bigger picture, always on the why.
Yeah. And have people who can provide feedback and maybe provide a counter to those things.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's important that accountability for me is important. I'm recognizing that, people should be able to have conversations with their members of parliament. They should be able to hold them to account.
Yeah.
And so when people are asking questions on social media, it's important that I'm able to know the difference between this is hateful and this is horrible, or this person is just asking a question. I think for me, it's recognizing that there are different people engaging on social media. There are the people who are there to be hateful, and there are people who are there because they want accountability and they want answers. And engaging with those two different groups differently is what I aim to do. But in terms of negative comment, I don't look at them. And usually it's somebody else that will say to me, actually, this is generally what's being said. And I had to keep away from it because, like, when I speak to other colleagues, you just enter a very deep and dark rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I cannot stress how much, sometimes you have to protect your mental health.
Yeah.
And I just know to protect my own mental health and my well-being and to avoid having anxieties, it just wasn't safe for me to just continuously look at comments. Because I know situations where it's impacted people's ability to just be out publicly. And I never want to get to that point.
Yeah. That is really true. I think it's a dark and dangerous place to let your mind go into. And I think it can also color your whole view of the world, can't it? Like, the world ends up becoming quite a dark and dangerous place. And that's what you notice rather than noticing all of the good and all of the light.
Yeah.
So it is important. I think it's really important for people to hear, because you've probably been at the sharp end of this more than most people will have. So your experiences with this, I think, can really help other people with protecting their mental health around online spaces as well.
Oh yes, I would say that one of the things I was told that being a Black female MP just means that naturally that this is what, sadly, I will be targeted more than my colleagues. So very on, I was quite aware of the fact that actually this, online hate is something that I will experience. But protecting my mental health has been a priority since having my baby.
Yeah.
One of the most scariest thing that happened was after having her, I was out campaigning and social media, people talking about threats, killing me and my baby together. And that terrified me. I'm going to be honest, that nearly gave me anxiety attacks because I wanted, as a new mom, to be out, to be exploring, to not be isolated, because that's not good for my mental health. But it always made me think, is this a baseless threat or is this an actual threat, knowing what's happened to my colleagues as well? And I remember speaking to one of my other colleagues who said to me, A, you need to get away from social media. B, you just need to make sure that you're looking after your health and your well-being. You're taking time to breathe, to spend time with family, to focus on what's important, to know your whys, to know your impact, and to just stay true to yourself. And that if you don't do that, that it's normal to enter into a spiral. And that advice has been so helpful.
Yeah, that's really great. And so on the back of that, is there any advice that you would give to, say, a pharmacist who is facing hostility, abuse, unrealistic expectations in the workplace?
I think, first of all, abuse is not acceptable. And it shouldn't happen in the workplace, either from colleagues or from patients. And for me, I know that obviously we've seen an increase in pharmacists experiencing abuse from patients due to the different challenges that the profession is experiencing. I would say that it's important that every workplace should have legislations, policies in place to protect pharmacists' well-being. There should be clear signs and make it very clear that abuse is not acceptable. And if somebody does speak rudely in a threatening way, then actually that person shouldn't be allowed on the premises. And there should be just that clear policy so the patients know that from the very beginning. I think secondly, it's important that as a pharmacist that you don't internalize this and recognize sometimes that patients have been through multiple people and we're usually the last point of call that this patient is speaking to, and we are probably the most accessible point of call, and that means that all the emotions that they felt for other people is being dumped on us, and it's important that we don't internalize it, and it's important that we don't take it personal. I would say that challenge it. If it's unacceptable, you have to challenge it and not accept it, because I've learned that if you do accept it, then it impacts your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and it's important that you don't allow other people's emotions to impact you. So where the situation is becoming aggressive, it's threatening, then it's important that a firm stance is made. Personally, I would say that workplaces should give the flexibility for pharmacists to be able to take a step. If there's a confrontation happening and you just need a breather, take a step back and just breathe. Collect your thought, and just deal with your emotions, because it's normal. You are human. We're not a robot. I think sometimes patients think we're a robot because they think that we have this perfect behavior. We have to always be perfectly presented. You are human, and if you are dealing with a patient at a particular time, just let them know that you can take a step, just to breathe, and then to go back to that conversation. But I would say it's always important as a pharmacist to remember why you entered into the profession, the impact that you're making, so that you stay grounded, so that you don't feel undervalued or feel frustrated. And then I'd say, do the things that are really important to you. Prioritize that. Prioritize the extracurricular activities that you might enjoy. Prioritize the time that you spend with your family. Really ensure that you're protecting your health and well-being. Because that will go a long way in just ensuring that you are a much happier and well-rounded person. So yeah, standing up against abuse where needed, protecting yourself in situations where it can be the aggression is real, and making sure that you are able to take a breather and accept the fact that nobody's expecting you to be perfect, that you are human, and having that grace on yourself.
Yeah, I also really liked what you said about remembering that it's not personal, and that you could be experiencing the culmination of someone else's experiences with loads of people, and you're just the one at the end receiving the emotional outburst that has come from that, but it's not really about you. So I think all of that is really great advice for pharmacists who may be feeling weighed down themselves by going through this.
Yeah, I normally have a conversation with my cousin who is community pharmacy, and I get lots of think of how do I handle this situation, and it is very difficult. You've got GP surgeries, you've got patients, you've got everyone, and you are usually the middle person. Yeah, and it's about being able to have empathy, being able to understand the different experiences that everybody, your stakeholders you're dealing with, and then trying to navigate and be that middle person that brings everyone together. But it is hard in those situations.
Yeah. So that makes me wonder, what does a good well-being day look like for you when you're kind of in the middle of some challenge? Like what does it actually look like?
I saw this question. I was just like, I feel like I have a challenge every day.
Yeah.
Every day I'm like, what is happening now?
Yeah.
I think it's the scale of the challenge.
Okay.
Like, I expect to be stressed every day now. I think my nervous system sadly has just accepted the fact that every single day I'm entering to work and something is happening.
Yeah.
Right? If something doesn't happen, it's like, oh, this is a nice unusual day. But in terms of what is a nice well-being day, I would say it's starting in the morning and having time just to breathe. Not rushing in and there's like 5 million things. It's just, and sometimes I do this, I just sit down, go through my emails on my own, clear my thoughts, write down exactly like 3 or 4 things I want to achieve in the day so that I stay grounded, and so that I feel like I'm achieving things. Because sometimes, just due to the nature of the job, you are putting out fires. Like you have a nice, put together diary, and then you realise that you've missed half of the meetings that you're meant to do. New things are coming through, and actually just complete different priorities are just being presented to you on the day. Yeah. So for me, having those 3 things help me stay grounded, help me feel as if I've definitely achieved something and I'm not being pulled left, right and centre. I also take some time to have my own mental health space. So I do know some areas in Parliament where I just sit down and breathe and just check in with myself, check in with my nervous system, make sure I'm okay. Ask myself if there's anything that's worrying me, if there's anyone that I need to check in that I haven't. And then I also make sure that I find time in the day to speak to people I generally enjoy talking to. So throughout the day, I'll just message a few people just to be like, are you around? Let's have a conversation. Because they keep me grounded. And also they make it into a lovely, enjoyable day, regardless of the challenges, regardless of whatever fire needs to be poured out, sorted. they help to bring that joy in the profession. And I'd say that it's always important to have people that you can lean on.
Yeah.
And even when I was a pharmacist, I had friends who, like, between you doing your ward rounds, be like, are you free quickly for coffee so that we can have a chat, so that I can so that we can catch up and stay grounded and just de-stress and kind of download on. So yeah, I still make sure that I do that.
I love that. So you've touched on a couple of things that we at the charity talk about a lot in terms of well-being. One being relationships. Focus on those good relationships, nurture those good relationships. They're so important for well-being.
Absolutely.
The other one is breathing. And in fact, I even have a video that I've done on YouTube where I'm teaching some breathing exercises that pharmacists can do quickly. Maybe just no one even needs to know you're doing it. Like, turn your back to the pharmacy and take like 30 seconds, and you can kind of do a breath reset. Yeah. So I love that you are bringing some of those things up yourself, because those are things that we also think are really important. And then the other thing I picked up on was you like to keep your eye on the big picture. And I think that is also key. It sounds like you're really attempting not to get mired down by all the firefighting, any negativity that comes your way, but trying to remember why you're there, what your goals are, make sure you achieve something meaningful every day. And that is keeping you focused on the more important things that motivate you. And I think that's another really important thing that I'm hearing you say sort of as a theme throughout this.
Yes. Oh no, that is, it's taken me a while to learn that, just how important having that is, in terms of just protecting my health and my well-being. Yeah. One of the strangest advice I was given from a fellow MP was, you are always going to be late to a meeting. Mm-hmm. Accept that. And your day is never going to go to plan. And initially in the beginning, I was definitely pushing back on that, because I was like, why can't that be? But now, over the years, I've learned actually to give myself that grace, to accept that I have to find things that I feel like I have control over, help me stay grounded, but also recognizing that I am in a profession where every single day something's going to change.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I just think that's so helpful, so brilliant. And as an MP, I imagine you work long hours. You work between London and your own constituency. How do you maintain any sort of work-life balance?
First thing is, it's a lifestyle job. Yeah. Like, that's one of the things I say to my new colleagues, that, before I try to treat it like a pharmacy profession where you have like your set hours and you're done. But now I've just come to accept the fact that my phone is always with me. I am always working. And being able to accept that actually has taken away the stress and the pressure that comes with always feeling like you have to be at the top form 100% of the time. It's just made me just accept the fact that actually this is just a new way of living. In terms of managing London and Coventry, I am still trying to figure it out. I'm going to hold my hand up to that.
Okay.
It has been hard in terms of finding that balance. And actually, sadly, early on, I would say it's my friendships and it's the family that took the biggest impact on that. Earlier on this year, I went to a friend's wedding, and I realised it was the first time since I've been elected that I'd been in the same room with everyone. Mm-hmm. And that has to do with the fact that sometimes my diary changed. Sometimes I've made commitments and something's happened last minute, and I've been like, sorry guys, I just can't. And that is something that I've come to reflect as to making sure that I prioritise my loved ones, the people who help me stay grounded, the people who are just great for my health and well-being.
Yeah.
I've also learned to really cherish the small moments. I think before I wanted to spend a whole day with people and plan big stuff. And now I've just learned, even if it's just 10 minutes coffee, and it might just be that a friend is working down the road at Guys and St. Thomas's and she's got 5 minutes for me, and I'm just pop in, catch up, and really just cherish the fact that actually, yes, we haven't planned a big day to, go out and explore, but we're still connecting and we're still building that relationship, and just accepting that that's just, that in itself is valuable. Even with my family members, I've sat down with my team and created a clear structure in terms of this is the time that I spend with family.
Yeah.
Whereas before you could call me and I'll be like, yeah, I'll be there. Now I'm just like, no, I want to be, having a little child has really questioned my work ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, she makes me a better version of myself, because she has helped me in terms of prioritizing my family life, spending time with her, being able to see her grow. So I do allocate like certain weekends, and just to say this is her time and this is my family time. That's been helpful. I've come to accept the fact that, like, the way the Parliament works, Monday to Thursdays I am in Parliament, I am in London. There's nothing I can do about that. And then from Thursdays to the weekend I am back home, and just having that clear structure has meant that I can plan in ahead in terms of meeting with family, just also in terms of being able to do my job properly. But I've just learned, and I've just come to accept the fact that I live off a diary.
Yeah.
And I have to invest in that diary to make sure that diary takes into account my health and my well-being. And one of the things I really struggled with before was eating. And that's something that many of my colleagues struggle with. Like, most of us never have lunch, and then we're like, have you had breakfast? No. Have you had lunch? No. It's like 6 p.m. No wonder we're all kind of spacing out.
Right.
So I'm learning to put that in my diary and just make sure that I'm consistently looking after my health. But a lot of that is just taking time.
Yeah.
But it's been a learning process, but it's definitely one that I value.
So Parliament is often portrayed as high pressure and adversarial. And I think anyone who's ever watched PMQs has kind of seen examples of that. Would you say that's true? Is that kind of what the working environment is really like?
I think it's a mixture of both. I would just say cross-party wise, we do have relatively good relationships. So there's many opportunities from MPs across different parties to work together on issues they feel passionately about.
Yeah.
But also politics is politics. So we are having heated conversations, challenging each other, and trying to put forward our different points of views. But it's definitely very high pressure. And I think as parliamentarians, for many people, that is just something that we learn to kind of adjust to.
Yeah. So how do you maintain relationships with other people in Parliament if they are coming at you in quite a challenging way? Not to take that personally or let it damage that relationship.
Oh, that's a great question. So my role in Parliament, I am a government whip. So I am in those situations quite often.
Yeah.
I would say that empathy, and that's why I said the pharmacy profession has helped kind of prepare me for that, because I recognise generally what people are going through.
Yeah.
And actually, my role has given me the unique opportunity to know people personally.
Yeah.
And to know about their backgrounds, their families, their thought processes. So sometimes I know when people are upset, I know that there's a bigger issue. And so when they're raising their voices, actually, to be honest, I don't really get that many people raising voices. I just generally have this is how I feel conversation. I can be empathetic and I can try to support them through what they're going through. But it can be hard sometimes. And sometimes I have to consistently remind myself that actually it's not about me. There's just been other factors at play. And sadly, I'm just a person in just receiving all that.
So it's that not taking it personally again.
Not taking it personally.
Yeah.
If I feel like somebody's crossed a line, I will just remind them that, hey, I think you just crossed a line there, but I recognise what you are going through. But I think empathy goes a long way with many members of Parliament. And I do that cross-party as well, because I recognise, we always say this, there's 650 of us, and we're the only people who truly understand what we're all going through. And so we have to be able to be empathetic to each other. We have to be able to show each other grace. And to be able to understand the different challenges that we're all facing through. And, I genuinely believe that if we don't support each other, then it's going to be a very lonely, lonely place. So we have to be proactive in doing that. So I try my best to do that. Yeah.
That's really nice to hear. And are there any wellbeing conversations happening in Parliament?
So there's different layers of wellbeing conversations happening, because we recognise that it's a tough job. It's tough to be, it's tough to work for an MP, because sadly our staffers also experience hate. I know of situations where, all the public abuse that MPs are facing, that some people will find the staffer and then pour it at them, even though they're just doing their job. So Parliament has created many support in place for that. So we have therapies there for counselling sessions. There are there's different HR supports if people need that support. There's occupational therapy. There's a whole dedicated team who are there just to provide that support for staffers and for MPs. And I remember one of the first things I was offered when I was elected was a mental health and wellbeing course, which runs over a couple of weeks, which helps MPs kind of learn the coping mechanisms to deal with the high pressure and the stress. And that's something that's offered to everybody just to help us. And I found it helpful because you're doing it with other colleagues and you're able to ask any question, nothing is stupid, but also realise that you're not the only person who is going through the same challenges. Yeah. All political parties also have their whips, who I am a whip, who are there to provide that support, who know people and who are learning to be flexible. We've got votes pretty much nearly every day. Sometimes you're there to Parliament to very, very late, and people have young kids and families, and my job as a whip is to be there to support them, to recognise that actually that flexibility is important. The Parliament has to provide the right environment for everybody based on their lifestyle in terms of their family commitments, disability and everything, and therefore we have to adjust. So one of the big changes I've seen, particularly in this Parliament, is recognising the different, just the fact that uniquely everyone's different, and challenging Parliament to say, what is it that we need to create a workplace that is inclusive of everyone, regardless of race, gender, their beliefs, their disability. And lots of work are being done in that. We've definitely, I'll say the wellbeing team have been very good in terms of adapting things for parliamentarians that need extra support in terms of their mental health and any learning difficulties. And also actually the Speaker has been trying to be adapting to people's needs as well. So if people can't, we have to bob consistently, and you could be bobbing for like 5 hours or standing up, and some people have physical limitation that stops that from happening. So recognizing that, some people have anxieties, and again recognizing that and creating that environment. So Parliament, we are on a journey of making it as inclusive as possible and recognising the differences that we all have and making it into a modern workplace. And I would say that that is one of the biggest shocks I experienced when I was elected, just how different it is from any other workplace in England. But we are doing the work needed to make it into an inclusive, positive, and as positive as it can be environment. But definitely there's a long list of things that are going on. Yeah. We're currently talking about modernisation, and one of the most hottest debate we're talking about is actually voting. So currently we do the traditional method of going through the lobbies, and it takes about 15-20 minutes just to vote. And now we're looking at how do we make the process more efficient? Mm-hmm. How do we take away some archaic things, and actually asking, why do we do it, and do we need to do it? But yeah, I'm glad that Parliament is modernisation and taking into account people's individual differences, because when I was elected, that wasn't the case. Right. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad it's evolving. So here at the charity, I'm sure you can imagine, we hear a lot of stories for pharmacists about the challenges they're facing, and yes, that we're the well-being charity for pharmacists, so we tend to talk to pharmacists when they're struggling with something. So I just wonder if you have anything to say about pharmacy and the challenges pharmacists are facing right now. Can I first start off by saying that Pharmacist Support does a wonderful job in supporting pharmacists through some of the most difficult life experiences and difficult situations that sometimes you just can't plan for as a human being. And I know, my limited involvement with the organisation, I've just seen the positive impact, the life-changing impact that you've had as an organisation. So thank you for all the work that you're doing in doing that. I am aware that the pharmacy as a profession is going through significant challenges. For pharmacy owners, you've got the pressure of the fact that actually the contracts have They've been quite difficult over the past couple of years, and that's impacted people's balance sheets and being able to stay profitable. For many pharmacists, we're in a situation where there are 0-hour contracts, there are long hours, we've got patient abuse. And then actually just as a member of the public, we're still dealing with cost of living challenges, healthcare challenges in terms of being able to access the necessary support in terms of health and well-being. So I am aware of a lot of the different challenges the pharmacists are experiencing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's, we definitely feel it, and we're trying to do our part in helping to support them in the way that we can. And, as I'm sure you are in terms of policy and things like that, which is, it sounds like why you got into this in the first place.
Yes, definitely it is. And I would say I know from the NHS, from an NHS perspective, work's being done to create a better workplace environment, looking at benefits that needs to be provided for healthcare professionals to create a healthy environment, workplace environment, and one that helps them meet their needs, not just financially, but actually the different incentives that their colleagues working in other sectors might be experiencing that they're currently not providing in the NHS, but also looking at health and well-being support as well. So I know significant investment has gone into delivering that. From an employment perspective, the government is working to address 0-hour contracts and unfair dismissals and some of the challenges that generally many locum pharmacists are experiencing, so that we can create more stability for pharmacists, but also better protections for them as well in the workplace. And in terms of the financial difficulties, lots of changes is happening in terms of pharmacy contracts. We've had Pharmacy First and hopefully an expansion of services coming up soon. And we are, proactively looking at how do we ensure that the pharmacists are being used to the best of their ability within their healthcare system. They're being supported to grow career-wise, because I know that's many frustration that pharmacists have experienced to me. And that we are also looking at how do we ensure the pharmacy becomes, the pharmacies themselves become profitable, so that we don't have situations where pharmacists are closing up and down the country, and the anxiety that many owners feel. And then one of the other work that I've been doing is just pharmacy leadership. I recognise that part of the frustration that many pharmacists feel was the lack of leadership role and opportunities that is afforded to the profession. So we are working on pathways so that we can have more leaders, more health leaders coming from the pharmacy profession.
That's great. I think pharmacists will be very reassured to know that they've got an advocate in Parliament.
Yeah, I love my profession.
So, yeah, I think that's great. We're getting to the end of our time, and I thought it might be nice to wrap up thinking about motivation and values. Yeah. And I think it might be interesting to look at, what keeps you motivated when progress can feel slow and resistance is high? How do you stay connected to your values when you have to compromise a lot? Like, how do you keep those values at the forefront of what you do and your motivation high when you're facing difficulties?
So that's two questions. One's around motivation and one's around values.
That's right, yeah.
In terms of motivation, I know I've said this 1,000 times in this podcast, but it is the impact that I want to make.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that I have been elected because people of Coventry North West have put their faith in me, and I have to deliver. And I recognize that policy really makes an impact in people's lives. And I would say growing up, my family's experienced many situations where policies has really impacted our lives. So I recognise that when I have the responsibility of taking a particular bill through Parliament, when I'm being asked questions about policies, I know that I have that responsibility of recognising that this is going to impact somebody, and that there will be unintended consequences from these policies. And I have that responsibility of constantly thinking, who is it that we might be impacting this policy? Who is it that we might have missed in this policy. So having that at the forefront of my mind helps me in terms of my why. It helps me, it even gives me the strength and the courage to go in there and ask the questions, because growing up, I wish sometimes that people had done that to some of the policies that impacted my life personally. So that helps to keep me accountable and grounded. What's the second part of the question?
Sorry, I shouldn't have combined the two questions into one. The second question was, how do you stay connected to your values in a profession where you've got to compromise? So can that impact your values? Or
so I've written down my values, like visibly written down my values on my phone, so that I can always just kind of check in. I talked earlier about sitting down and checking in with my nervous system. And for me, that's important because it has to pass the test. Right? It always has to pass the test. And even when it's being pushed, I need to ask myself, like, am I comfortable? And if I'm not comfortable, then I need to come out and speak about it. Like I said, for me, it's important that in every conversation, there's that diversity of thought, and that there are just different inputs in that conversation. So if I'm uncomfortable, then I will voice my uncomfortability. I will push back and just say, no, this is just not right. I have family members. My husband usually will check in with me and have that conversation. How am I feeling? I personally make sure I check with them myself. And I always remind myself what my values are and my why. So that I'm not distracted, so that I don't I just don't end up doing things that I'm completely uncomfortable with. And for me, I've always been clear about my values, because it's my values that led me into politics. It's the impact that I want to make in people's lives. It's the fact that I want to address inequalities. It's the fact that I want to address poverty. And it's that, that's what keeps me motivated. And when I'm out, another thing that I do sometimes, if I feel like I genuinely need to be grounded every year, is I take a walk where I grew up. I take a walk in the different areas that have had an impact in my life in the situations, and remind myself that, with all due respect, those things are still happening, and I just wasn't that one-off special, and that next generation needs me to go out and to fight and to be that voice for them, so that they don't have to experience some of the challenges that I grew up with, and that helps me. And I also make sure I stay grounded with people around me. So like I speak to my pharmacy cousin, who will tell me, I know you said this has happened, but definitely that's not what I'm seeing. And I'll speak to my friend in education who will say the same thing. And I'm like, okay, thank you for that feedback. I can take that in. So having those people who are grounded, who are experiencing the lived impact of some of the policies, also help to kind of keep me grounded in a long way. But definitely I'll say just staying true to who I am and keeping it going. And also, like, I don't know, maybe the way like I said, I've always seen my job as just another route of pharmacy. So the way I see it, still registered, still a pharmacist. And like when I go into the job, I'm just doing the impact that I'm going to be making. So yeah, I try not to overthink it.
Yeah.
That helps.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your, I'm sure, very busy schedule to come up to Manchester, to be here in person so that we could have this conversation. I think your story is going to be really inspiring to people. I think that hearing how you've dealt with some of your challenges is going to help others and be very impactful. I also think that hearing your story and how you've made the changes in your career and in your life might even spur other people to make changes in their lives that they've maybe been thinking about but haven't had the courage or the self-belief to do it. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. And the last thing I'd say is one of the best advice I've been given is don't be limited by other people's limited imagination of you. Like, that should never be a barrier. People will tell you what they think, or you can't do anything. As long as you believe in yourself, as long as you're grounded within yourself, then you can achieve whatever you put your mind to. And that's a belief that I hold dear.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and are thinking about changes that you've been may be wanting to make in your own life, you may wish to look at our Live the Life You Want to Lead workshop, which is available on our Wellbeing Learning platform. And in it, we explore values. So this can help you to really become clear on what your values are and if you're living your life in alignment with them. You can find a link to the platform in the Wellbeing section of our website. We want to continue providing our free and confidential support services and to open up conversations like this to ensure that no one in our pharmacy family faces challenging times alone. As an independent charity, we rely on donations from individuals and organizations across the profession to enable us to do this. So if you're in a position to help us, please consider making a donation today. You can find information about how to donate in the show's description or at the end of this video. Donations help us to provide our essential services, including our counseling and peer support, financial assistance, and more. So Taiwo, thank you once again for being here today. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again on our next podcast.